Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and of course, joined in by my co-hosts, Peter Baracchini and Devin Little. We're a month away. Well, now less than a month away from the draft. No, we are a month. Well, a little more over a month. It's a Saturday. I already messed up the intro before we started, so I guess it's just a matter of more mistakes. But we are a little over a month away from the draft in July in Montreal, and we're going to keep talking draft this time, and we're going to talk some draft targets of the teams that we cover: Vancouver Canucks, Detroit Red Wings, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll have some hypotheticals in the second round because the Canucks don't have a second round pick and the Maple Leafs don't have one either. So the only one that actually does is the Red Wings. So Devin will actually have two. He has two picks, but we're going to throw out some targets that we think our teams should target and look at in this upcoming draft. And so we're going to have some fun with that. And we're also going to look at some the 2019, 2020, and 2021 drafts to see what surprises have already come out of that. So we're going to have some fun with that as well. So before we get going, though, this week's show is, of course, brought to you by the Hockey Writers Sports Betting Guide, brand new source for daily sports betting odds, lines, props, and futures, as well as some daily fantasy strategies and analysis. Make sure you're following THW Bets on Twitter and Facebook to get the latest on everything sports betting. Of course, if you do decide to bet, make sure you're doing so responsibly, and check out those resources in the description below if you or anyone you know has a problem with gambling. All right, let's get going with this and start with the first round, some draft targets. And we'll start with you, Devin, because you've got the highest first round pick in this draft. Who do you think the Red Wings should target? And I know we're going to have that mock draft coming out. Won't spoil that pick. It may or may not be the ones you're saying here. So take it away.
Well, it's interesting because, even when we were doing that mock draft, when my pick was up, I was kind of torn between what I thought the team should do and what I thought Steve Yzerman might do, because as we know, Yzerman is one to kind of surprise you on the draft floor. So I know for me personally, I have a list of 5 players I'd like to see the Red Wings take at 8th overall. Both of you know who number 1 and 2 are on that list. I'll throw them out real quickly. I'm not going to talk about them intensively because I already have. One would be Matthew Zator, and number 2 would be John from Lekaramaki. After them, Cutter Gauthier is a player that stands out to me as potentially being fit for the Red Wings. Big, sizable winger. Red Wings have a lot of skilled forwards that don't necessarily have a ton of size. They have Elmer Soderblom in the system, but he's middle 6 at best. I don't see him being a top line player. So if they could get a player that can kind of play that power game on the top line, that would be a huge get for them. And then another guy that I could see them taking a swing on would be Brad Lambert. And I really thought about taking him when we did our mock draft. There's a tease. It wasn't Brad Lambert. But I think he's really kind of the home run swing of the first round, because for every person who loves everything that there is about his game, there's another person who hates it and doesn't think he's even a first round caliber prospect. If he reaches his peak, he's going to be a top line talent and potentially one of the very best players to come out of this draft. And I can see that being an Yzerman pick. And so what this comes down to for me is, what are the Red Wings going to target in the first round? A forward and one that can potentially play on the top line in the future. So look out for the Red Wings to target a player that can fit that role.
Yeah, those are all great names that would be great additions to the Red Wings prospect pool, because they already got great pieces, like you mentioned, a few of them already there. And whoever they add is going to add a lot to that system. And Yzerman may go off the board, but he did so with Moritz Seider around this same area, right? So he could reach down and pick a guy that you have no idea right now, and all of a sudden they'll be like flying through prospect profiles. Well, where is this guy? So
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. That's gonna be fun. For the Canucks, I mean, like in our mock draft on the show here, I picked Liam Ogren and got skewered a little bit on Facebook, social media, and all that. I mean, you know what? He could definitely be a pick of the Canucks. I mean, yes, he is ranked around that area. He's a Swede. And, you know, I kind of outlined that in my article there, but, you know, I'll pick someone else in this segment here because there's so many guys that the Canucks could go for because they need everything. They need defense. They need forwards. Not necessarily, you know, goaltending is fine and they wouldn't pick one here anyway, but you know, forwards and defense, they need to add to their system, and skill preferably would be added on the forward side to that top line type potential. And on the defense, they need right-hand defensemen. And there's a few of them up at this range. And, you know, everyone knows, if you've read my article on Denton Matejchuk, you know how much I love that guy. If the Canucks are around that area, they should definitely look at him. Brad Lambert's another name. Like, he could drop to 15 if all the rumors are true that he's going to drop in this draft. He could be available at 15. So the Canucks could have potential to draft him. You know, in our mock draft, if he would have dropped that far, and that's a little bit of a spoiler, he didn't go down to 15. But you know, the Canucks, I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna probably pick him if he was still available. So I mean, forwards and defense are going to be the target of the Canucks in the first round. In my mind, at this point of the draft, there's a few names I would like Denton Matejchuk. If Korchinski somehow falls to 15, he's another guy I'd look at. Of course, Liam Ogren, Lekaramaki, you know, if they're lucky that he drops to 15, I don't think that's happening. He's probably going to go in the top 10. But if Lekaramaki is definitely a name to look at. Any of the trio of Swedes that have been dominating the SHL junior leagues there, that's another one. Any of those three would be probably my picks. But I mean, overall, the Canucks have a lot of options at 15. Pavel Mintyukov's another name. I mean, any of those defensemen that are up there, even if they are left-handers, the Canucks need to add to that pool. That Quinn Hughes basically is their most elite defenseman. Jack Rathbone is the other guy coming up, but beyond that, there's all these projects. You don't know what they're going to end up being. So they need some more sure thing, well, quote unquote sure things, because you don't even know these guys are going to be sure things, but they need more guys that have a higher probability of becoming that. So that's my thought process. I mean, I'm not in the heads of Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford and the scouting staff. That's basically been overhauled since they took over. So we don't even know, by looking even in the past, of who the Canucks have picked, because they got a whole new, group of people kind of talking about it. So we'll see on what the Canucks do with that pick. They may even trade down. So, I mean, no idea what the Canucks are going to do. They can even add first round picks. So we'll see what happens there. Peter, on the Maple Leafs side, what do you think that they should be targeting? And give us some names there.
Well, I think with the Maple Leafs, it's always going to be best player available, but I think you're going to take into account the fact that, do they play with skill? Do they have the speed, the work ethic, and everything like that? Size has been on the mind of everybody. I mean, we took Matthew Knies in the second round, and look how well he's playing with the skill set that he has. So I think if you're highly skilled and you got speed, you're going to fit well in the Maple Leaf system no matter what. And if you got size, it's going to be a bonus. Personally, I looking at their depth chart, they got, some decent left wingers. I mean, you got Amirov. Unfortunately, he's been dealt with his cancer diagnosis and he's recovering. But you also got Pontus Holmberg, Matthew Knies, as I mentioned, Dmitriev Chinnikov. You got some solid prospects on the left-hand side, but the right wing is very bare, and even up the middle. You got depth names, possibly like Ty Voigt, Abruzzese, Hirvonen still developing, Ryan Torberg. So you got names, but no dynamic possible top six options that will make an immediate impact. And if I'm the Leafs, I'm targeting, starting with some European names, Yuri Kulich, He's ranked 13th. If he's still there when the Maple Leafs are selecting in between that 25, 26, 27 range or 28, I think he would be a really great fit. He's got the size, the shot. We saw that at the U18s. Callie Adelius, I'm a huge fan of his with his, puck distribution and ability to push the pace of play. And I'm going to say a little surprise here, Noah Ostlund. I think because he's 18th on Central Scouting, the Maple Leafs love the skill, love the pace, love players that push the pace of play. Noah Ostlund did exactly that at the World U18s, and he was absolutely dynamic for the Maple Leafs. In terms of other names on the North American side, I really like Ryan Chesley's game. I thought he was fantastic at the U18s, right-handed shot, and again, kind of filling out the right-hand side on both wing and defense. And I'm going to go Rutger McGroarty. I mean, the fact that he's the 22nd on there, he's got a powerful shot. The skating has improved. He's got that power forward game, and it's very reminiscent of that of Matthew Knies, but a little bit more power in his shot. Yeah. So the fact that you're able to try and pair both of them up on a line, if you have Knies on the left and Rutger McGroarty on the right, that's probably going to be a little bit fun if you're a Maple Leafs head. Again, this is all who who I'm thinking of at the moment because of where they are and where the Maple Leafs are and the fit that it may have based on best player available, based on the skill set and the projection. I'm kind of still shocked that he's maybe still below 20s, but I think he is a name that if he puts his mind to it and develops properly, he can be a threat. And those are just some of the names that I'm targeting. But if I were to pick one as my ultimate favorite, I'm probably going either Adelius, Ostlund, or Chesley as my top three.
Yeah, those would all be great additions to the Maple Leaf system. And, they haven't had a first round pick, for the last two drafts because they traded it away. So
2020 was the last one they had.
Yeah. So it's been a couple seasons, a couple drafts that have gone by that they haven't had a first round pick to talk about. So it'd be great to talk about a first round pick.
Please.
So I'm not sure. No, Peter, I don't think they'll be trading it. You haven't heard anything that, you never know though. They could do something.
Unless there's a deal that you can't refuse or turn down and it has to involve a top prospect and a pick. Do it.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the moment, I'd keep that pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on the deal. And even on the Canucks side, I hope they don't trade it, but I think you get an impact young player after throwing that first round pick, then, you definitely look at that, but they need to add to their prospect pool, not remove. So anything that they can do with that first round pick, both sides need to injection of talent in their prospect pools because according to the farm system rankings, and both here at the Hockey Writers and elsewhere, both teams are very low on those rankings. So they need to boost that somehow. All right, let's move to the second round and where Devin's the only one that has for sure picks here. So Devin, give us some names that the Red Wings could be targeting in that second round.
Well, if they don't get a Swede in the first round, I think this is where they'll fall back into old habits and start to load up on Swedish players. I even took one in the second round of our mock draft. A couple players that jump out at me. They aren't going to be players that I picked in this one just for spoiler reasons. One that stands out is Matthias Havelid. I'm not entirely sure he will be there at 40 when the Red Wings make their pick. But if he is there, I think he kind of fits what the Red Wings are doing. A little smaller in stature, but Swedish, can play with pace, can play with skill in the offensive zone. And he's right-handed, and they actually have a need for right-handed defensemen in their system. So I could see him being a player of interest if he's there at pick 40. Excuse me. And then another player that I could see them potentially going after is Philip Bystad, center playing over there in the J20 league. He's, like I said, a center, and he's somebody that I was crossing my fingers and hoping I was going to get to pick in our mock draft. Spoiler, I didn't. But he's somebody that if the Red Wings end up not being able to get a center in the first round, say they get like a winger or something, Bysted's maybe a decent fallback option. I don't know if he's going to be a top line center in the NHL, but he could be potentially a second line center.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what the Red Wings need to do is just bolster their center depth and their prospect pool, because even if their future top line center doesn't come from their prospect pool, like, directly, they can use those prospects in a trade, or they can develop them into, to make other players expendable. So
yeah,
like I said, at the end of the day, it comes down to their need for centers. And I think Bysted, again, kind of fits into the mold of how the Red Wings like to develop their players. Comes from a league that they scout heavily, or from a nation that they scout heavily. And I don't know, I could see him, I see him being a more logical option at 40 than 52. But who knows? Maybe they're able to get both Havelid and Bysted.
Yeah, those are definitely names that are sure to be on their radar, because we all know the Red Wings love for that for the Swedish connection. So that wouldn't surprise me any sense. So it's be fun to see who they actually pick there. And again, add to their system that is getting stronger by the draft. So we'll see who they pick, and who you'll be talking about in the recaps once that draft is over. All right, now we'll get into the hypotheticals, because the Maple Leafs and the Canucks do not have picks in this round as of right now, because the Canucks traded it in the Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Connor Garland trade. Over the top. They shouldn't have traded that second round pick. They already traded a first rounder in that. So, but that's another discussion. And Peter, the Maple Leafs traded theirs as well. So and the Giordano trade, which ended up being pretty good, because they've re-signed him to a pretty budget-friendly deal, $800,000, I think it was.
Yeah.
So that trade's turned out pretty good. So I think you're probably okay. If you're the Maple Leafs, you're okay with trading that second round pick in that deal. But they could potentially get it back. The Canucks potentially could get theirs, get another one in there, because I'm sure they're looking, because, anytime you can add draft picks is a good thing. All right, Peter. So if they trade to get one, first we'll ask the question here, who would they trade to get that pick? And then if they do get one back there, who would they pick?
I'm not sure anybody would like to wheel and deal with the Maple Leafs. I don't know. It just kind of seems like that. Oh, why would we help the Maple Leafs out and give them a second round pick? But then again, trades happen. But yeah, that Giordano trade and signing is looking very well right now. 38, still able to play a high pace game. Love the contract. But if I'm looking at a team to try and make a trade with, I'm not going to pick one specifically, but if they were able to get one in that 55-64 range, like towards the latter half of the second round, I think that would be ideal, because that's where they selected Matthew Knies. And, with the way that they scouted players, if they could find a really solid player at that range that could still have a high impact level play down the line, and if they, knowing their development system, I think they'll fare very well in that regard. There are three names that stand out to me. One is just recently Michael Butchinger from the Guelph Storm. He's really stood out for me. I really love his ability to just play a solid two-way game, great in transition, great speed, and the work ethic is there. And I'm going to say this quite a bit, the work ethic for all these players. Noah Warren on the right-hand side from Gatineau. I really loved his play, and he really stood out for me at the top prospects game, where he was just an absolute beast with his physicality and his defensive play. Offensive game, I don't know if it's going to translate, but he has improved in terms of his, shot selection, getting involved in the play. And center, I'm probably going to get a lot of questions about this, but Kyle Dubas loves the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Sioux Boy. And I'm going with Bryce McConnell-Barker. Great size, and I like to call him a two-way center with a scoring touch. He's got a fantastic shot, great awareness to, maneuver in the offensive zone, get open, wire one-timer. He's got a heavy power and great accuracy with that. And, when he doesn't have the puck, he's a solid two-way or solid defensively. He provides great support. able to get into the lanes. And the fact that he has that aspect with them right now, it's a lot of promise. So if the Maple Leafs were to get one of those three later on in the second round before the third, or if one of them is there for the third, so be it. Take them, because I think those three match the mold of where they're trying to go with the blend of speed, physicality from Warren, and the smarts and skill set that all three of them have.
Yeah, those are all great names. Bryce McConnell Barker was, he's a really good. I like his game too. He really reminds me of Bo Horvat, actually.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the best skating. But Horvat had those questions about him when he was drafted too. Yes, he was drafted in the top 10, a lot higher. But he's turned into a pretty good skater. I mean, he's not he's not Connor McDavid fast by any means, but he's got some speed that everyone thought he wouldn't have, that he'd top out as a third line center. And he's not, even though a lot of people still think he's the third line center. He's a second line guy. Like he put up 33 goals or something this year, and takes like almost every face off the Canucks.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Canucks, I'll talk about them. And the thing is, I really want them to get back into the second round, because there's so many names in the second round that I think the Canucks would definitely look at. Rutherford was asked about it. If the Canucks could get into the second, if they're looking to, he said, of course, these are the cliche things that GMs and, president, whatever, say. Oh no, we'd like to, if it's possible, which, I mean, that's usually the case. If it's possible, yes, you'll do it. And he said, but you have to give up a good player to get those second round picks. Also true. So, I mean, the Canucks could trade guys like Connor Garland. I think he's worth a first rounder, but a lot of people don't think that he could be get a second round pick for him. Tyler Myers is another name that could potentially gain a second rounder, even though a lot of people don't agree with that either. There's guys that could definitely garner that second round pick. Tanner Pearson's another name that could get that. We'll see. I mean, the Canucks do have some pieces that they could dangle out there to get some other assets. A team, I'm going to say one team. If you want to see all the teams, you can check out my article on that. Just a shameless plug. But getting a guy, from the Seattle Kraken, because the Kraken have a lot of second round picks. They sure loaded up. So, I mean, there's going to be teams calling on them saying, you want to give up what? We'll give you this guy. We'll give you some stuff. So if they end up, dealing with them, I don't think they're going to be able to pry an early second rounder from them because of their pick, because that's in the top bit of the second round. But if they can get some of those later guys, there's a few names that I like from the second that could potentially be in the second round. Lane Hudson is one that I really like. I mean, again, undersized, but one of the most dynamic offensive defensemen in this draft. He's creative. He's a great skater. He reminds me a lot of Quinn Hughes, although he is a bit smaller. He has those same instincts. And again, defensively could be a bit to work on. But again, he's got that offensive instinct, hockey IQ, all that you look at in this league right now, because you need those puck movers. You can't not have them. I mean, that you look at the teams that are in the playoffs right now, they all have defensemen that can move the puck. Cale Makar in Colorado, Darnell Nurse in Edmonton. They need more of those guys though. But that's another discussion. A lot of these teams have these defensemen that can move the puck, and you need that in this league. So Lane Hudson's a name that I would look at. Simon Forsmark's another one. Again, Swede. Yeah. He has similar attributes. There's a few guys. I'm just looking at some of these. Adam Ingram's another one for forward side. I mean, I could just go through these. And Pickering could drop in, but he's a high end second rounder. So, I mean, there's quite a few names that I would look at in this second round if the Canucks were able to get it. Again, it's hypothetical, because it seems like whenever any of these teams try to get picks in the first or second round, they say we want to, but they never do. So it's either they move up and down and gain picks. They don't get the one they want to kind of move into that. A lot of people say, the Devils are going to move that second overall pick. probably won't happen because it's all these rumors and never does. We'd love it to happen. We love the drama, but I don't think it will, but we will see. So that's the second round on, for one team that will definitely have those picks, but we'll find out once the draft goes if the Maple Leafs or the Canucks end up getting to that second round too. And we can talk about that. Let's move into the more sure things because all these teams have later round picks in rounds 3 to 7. So let's pick two guys that could potentially be gems in this. We love the later round picks end up being impact players. Just look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. There's quite a few guys on that team that were not first or second round picks or even third round picks. There are guys that are drafted in the 5th, 6th, beyond. We'll start with you, Devin, on who do you think the Red Wings? The Red Wings have had some success in the later rounds as well. Who do you have targeted in your mind that could potentially be impact players down the line, but get drafted later on?
Well, one player is one that I actually brought up on last week's episode. That's Gavin Hayes. He plays for the Flint Firebirds. It's me making mistakes now too. Flint Firebirds. So he's in the Red Wings backyard. I got to think that they've looked at him once or twice. And like I said last week, he plays a 2-way game. Plays kind of a tenacious game. It's not explosive offensively, but he can produce. He has a package that I think could translate to a nifty little middle six winger at the NHL level if he's developed correctly. And like I said, he's in the Red Wings backyard, so chances are they've looked at him once or twice. So, and they need wingers too. Like they need forwards. If there's one thing I need to emphasize about this draft targets episode, it's that you should expect the Red Wings to really load up on forwards in this year's draft. So, getting a winger with some upside there, I think that they would at least consider it heavily. And then another one, I'm not even sure this one will be available in the 3rd round, but I think that he could slip there. And he's just another player that I think kind of fits a need for them, and that's Julian Lutz out of Germany. And as we all know, the Red Wings are not afraid to pick from Germany. Worked out for him once or twice before. But Lutz is another, same reason why I said Cutter Gauthier could be a good pick for them. Lutz is kind of a big boy who plays a big boy game. He's a tenacious forechecker, has skill to go along with his size, and can play that power forward role. He wouldn't be as high end of one as a Gauthier would be, but he could be a kind of a 3rd line bully that can potch in maybe 20 goals at his peak. And at the end of the day, to kind of go back with my message there, I think the Red Wings just need players that can project to fill different roles at different places in their lineups, whether it's the 1st line or 3rd line, but impact roles. They have plenty of guys that project to be 4th liners. They need guys that can produce in the top 9. And I think that with Hayes and Lutz, those guys could both potentially become those types of players.
Yeah, they definitely, we've mentioned we mentioned one of those names before, like last week. So yeah, those are definitely guys that could potentially be that. And we will see a number of these, we never know. The later rounds have produced quite a few gems in the past. And both Red Wings and the Red Wings have seen that too. So we'll see what happens with those two, and if the Red Wings do pick one of those guys. So we'll see. Peter, who do you think the Maple Leafs could target in those later rounds that could potentially be gems later on in their career?
I was searching through to try and find one, but it's really difficult when you start to get to those later stages. I see, the Maple Leafs do have a 3rd rounder. I see some that, Spencer Silva is one name that's potentially a 3rd rounder. Maybe if you try to take a swing at him, he's got some upside with his, offensive capabilities. He's very strong with his mobility. We saw at the World U18s that he can play with a bit of an edge, play with some bite. He was a big factor for them in the games that he played. So he's got some upside there. As for the 7th pick with the Maple Leafs, it could go either way. I mean, it really is. Actually, I would like to highlight one more, Chase Weir from the Red Deer Rebels, with the third round pick if they choose to try and take him. Obviously, again, going defense, bit of a theme here with the right-handed shot. So, in terms of the 7th round pick, I mean, it could go either way. I mean, you could take whoever you want. I don't know for a fact that, I mean, you would like to try and take a goaltender. I mean, if you can, maybe Nolan Lalonde. Maybe you try it if Reed Dick is available. He looked pretty good at the prospects game and even at the U18s. That one to me is a little bit more difficult because, not necessarily options are limitless, but there's some names that I really haven't watched that are going to be probably selected, and it's just going to be a bit of a mess. So I think maybe if you go a goaltender, I think the Maple Leafs need to address some goaltending. If you try and develop one that late, so be it, because there are some guys with some upside.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, the thing is, you throw darts at the board and see if it'll hit the bullseye. I mean, that's basically what we said on the grind line. You get as many darts as you can and just throw them, because you never know what'll hit, and you get as many picks as you can. So we'll see what happens. For the Canucks, I'm looking again defense in these later rounds. I mean, Michael Mastrodomenico. There's a great name there. He's a right-hand shot defense, plays in the USHL, committed to University of Notre Dame in the NCAA next year. He and the Canucks have not been shy in the past of going those route of the college guys. Again, they have a different group leading the charge, so it may change. Although, if you look in the past of what Alvin and Rutherford have done with the Penguins, they're not shy to look at the NCAA route and the US route too. So this is a guy that could be on their radar. Great mobility, great puck moving defenseman. Is quite physical. He kind of goes out of his way to be physical sometimes, but that's not a bad thing for defense, especially with the Canucks. They need some more defensemen that are willing to do that. 6'2", 196. So he's not small. He's one of those bigger defensemen and that can skate. He's not ranked by a lot of places. According to Elite Prospects, he's not ranked anywhere. He is ranked by you, Peter, I believe in the later hundreds. So, I mean, I'm writing his prospect profile right now. So that I believe that's the only ranking I saw. So it's like, Peter, you look to be the only guy that looks at him in the later than or earlier than the fifth, sixth, seventh round. So he may drop into that range of being a 6th round pick. Who knows? The Canucks have been able to get a few guys in that range that have looked pretty good in the past here. And, so we'll see what happens there. Another name I'm kind of looking at that may be around that 4th, 5th round range too is Casper Lundell, who's the brother of Anton Lundell. And we know how good he is. He's been, I don't think he'll end up being as good as him, but he's got a lot of the same attributes. Very good defensively. He's got some offensive upside. So, that could be another guy. Again, he's Finnish. He's not Swedish, but he's in that same realm. The Canucks have looked at Finnish players in the past as well. So he could be a name. Ludvig, I have his name here to make sure I'm saying it right. Ludvig Jansen is another guy. Again, defenseman, right-hand shot. Although he may kind of approach the 2nd round because there's a few rankings that have him in that range. So it may not drop into that 3rd round. But again, if he does, he's a good target, right-hand shot, Swedish, good puck mover. He's shown to be a good mobile defenseman, this year too. So lots of options that the Canucks could look at, throw some darts at the board, see if some of these right-hand shot defensemen hit. Because again, that's a big need in their system, or one of them, because they've got a few. But so those are names that I'm looking at in the later rounds. Look out for an article going more deep into these names, because I will be writing one on that too. So look out as we keep going get closer to the draft. All right. So there's our draft targets. Well, I mean, that's for these teams. So we're going to do this as a series and start looking at some of the other teams that we don't cover normally, but we may get on a writer from some of the other teams, potentially if they're available, to get their thoughts on their draft targets. So we'll give our thoughts as well. So that was fun. We'll keep going on this up until the draft, and we'll see what names we kind of throw out for other teams to fill their needs.